Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome into Nittany Nation Overtime. I am Jack Wascher. Thanks again for joining us. Let's meet the panel for tonight's show. From left to right on your TV screen, Mark Brennan from FightOnState.com and Lions 24/7. Neil Rudell from the Altoona Mirror, and former Penn State great Mike Irwin back again in the saddle with us. Thank you all for joining us. Guys, we finally have a Penn State win to talk about, 27-17 over Michigan. And honestly, I think they may not lose again in 2020. Granted, they only have 2 games left, but, you know, I got to make statements like that. So, Mark, even though Michigan is down, what did yesterday's win, really mean to this program that feels like it's taking hits every week?
Yeah, I think, we've been pretty tough on the coaching staff here. And the one thing that really jumps out to me, I think you have to give the coaching staff a lot of credit. It would have been real easy to mail everything in when you're 0-5 and really with nothing left to play for, but they didn't. They had to depend on a lot of young guys. They got them ready to play. Nobody's going to confuse this Michigan State with Ohio State or some power team. But, this was a game of who wanted it more or maybe who wanted it less. And to me, James Franklin and his staff got their players ready to go. Holiday week, guys banged up, and went out and played well and won the game.
Yeah, I think it's great that they changed the national narrative and stopped the bleeding and really changed the course of the season. I can't give them a lot of credit for not quitting, because I think that's what they're there to do, to put their best. We were criticizing their effort the first few weeks. So, but Jack, to your point, they actually could play 4 games left this year. Because there's a Big Ten West-East potential matchup, and then we'll see what happens with what would presumably be a pre-January 1st bowl game somewhere, should they choose to accept that, or should there be one.
I agree with Jack. I think we have something to look forward to. We've got 2 more games left, and I'm going to put my money on Penn State for the next couple of games, because Rutgers and Michigan State are both beatable. But I go back to what Mark said. I think coming out and 5 losses, the attitude of the kids, to hang in there and keep battling through all this. They could have easily given up, and the coaching staff too. I was ready originally just to criticize the coaching staff, but I think coaches have done a good job keeping them together. And obviously, beating Michigan makes the season. My brother-in-law said, anytime you beat Michigan, it's been a good season.
I think I noticed something yesterday in the post-game press conference. Franklin sounded happier, like for the first time since, I don't know, August, maybe. I can't remember, but he seemed upbeat. He just said we were gritty and whatnot. It felt like a different Franklin post-game. Did you guys kind of notice those same things when talking with him, after the game?
Yeah, I think part of it was because not only that they won, but the way they won. At the beginning of the fourth quarter, it looked like they were going to blow another game. And instead of doing that, when Michigan goes down and cuts it to 3, Penn State, the offense drives down the field and scores. Then the defense gets into a position where it has what appears to be a turnover that clinches the game. That's taken away, and then comes up with a huge 4th down stop. So I think those are sort of like little building blocks that you can start stacking one on top of another toward the end of this season. He'll never say toward next season, but toward the end of this season and toward next season.
And let's face it, James is a very emotional guy. He feeds off the highs and he takes the lows really hard. And I think that we saw that this season when their tires were shot out against Indiana, and then they lose to Ohio State. So what is really left here to pick up the pieces? So I think in that regard, they can get a lot of it. They seem to fuel themselves better after a win than a loss. So, and I agree with it. I think they did better in terms of their coordination of their offense. They went down there. They were in a couple 3rd down situations. They got the ball to Dodson. Good idea. Your best offensive player. They ran the ball harder. There's more positives they can take.
The other big thing is the turnovers.
Yeah.
The first 5 games, we had 14 turnovers. We didn't have a turnover yesterday. And then we got a fast start for a change, which is unusual. That we went right down to and scored the first possession when we had the ball. And so that made a big difference. The team had something to look forward to.
Hey, here's an interesting thing, Mike. That game ended up, a couple of us in the press box were talking about it from both teams. That game somehow was on ABC. So think about it. If that game's not on ABC, If that's not on a major network with all these camera angles, if that's on BTN and not a knock on BTN, that Parker Washington play may well have been not overturned. So the fact that you had two power schools, I think it says something about Michigan and Penn State when ABC is still willing to cover it, and Penn State caught a little bit of a break that they had the right camera angle of a play that was overturned.
Right, and the ruling on the field was a fumble. That would have been their fourth straight
That's what I'm saying.
Surrendered
And now all of a sudden
score.
the landslide is hitting again.
Yeah, and you mentioned Parker Washington, Mark. You know, him and Kevon Lee, I think, really showed out yesterday and have been very impressive in the first 6 games of the season. Which of the two, you know, is more of a, I guess, a shock to you? I guess Lee, we weren't expecting at all, but I think finding someone outside of Dotson, I think, has been a very much a bright spot, you know, with Washington's emergence.
Yeah, I mean, we had heard a lot about Parker Washington and what he was going to be able to do. The coaching staff was really high on him, and not that they weren't high on Kevon Lee, but we expected Journey Brown or Noah Kane or even Devin Ford, and when they weren't there, for him to step up and do what he did. And I also think just the freshmen in general. You started 2 freshmen with 2 players with freshman eligibility at tight end. You started a freshman with eligibility guy, redshirt freshman at tackle. I think they started 6 redshirt freshmen or true freshmen on offense, which again leads you toward looking toward the future.
If you look at it, I think there's 81 underclassmen on that team. 55 are either freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So there's a lot. I mean, I think they only have 10 seniors altogether that are going to be gone from that team. And it's unfortunate that we have to go through this coronavirus because most of these kids haven't had a lot of practice. I mean, you know, I keep thinking about the tackling being poor and this and that, but you think how many times they've actually had the chance to practice and go out there and playing. They missed all preseason, spring practice, and then during the thing there, you know, how many times
it's affected the tackling in a lot of places. Their tackling was better yesterday, most of it.
No doubt. Well, coming up next, did Penn State finally find the right quarterback formula? We discuss that next.
Now's your chance to switch to Medicare from a name you trust, a name that stands for 100 years of quality care. Geisinger. Geisinger Gold Medicare Advantage plans start at $0 a month, including coverage for medical, hospital, and prescriptions with most plans. With $0 deductibles, $0 preventive care, $0 vaccines. Insulin as low as $17.50 a month, which could save you thousands per year. Plus options for dental, vision, and hearing benefits. Learn more. Call today for a free Medicare coverage check. Compare your coverage to our plans and make sure you're getting all you deserve. Geisinger Gold Medicare Advantage plans give you access to our many doctors and hospitals, plus thousands more. More than 29,000 doctors and 100 hospitals across Pennsylvania. You have until December 7th to choose a new Medicare plan. Call for your free Medicare coverage check today. It's time to switch to Geisinger.
You ride life at full throttle, run wide open from start to finish. You're an adrenaline junkie. On or off the road, Yamaha builds it. You want it? 5-Star Power Sports has got it. Destination Duncansville. 5-Star's got a huge selection of Yamaha bikes, quads, side-by-sides, watercrafts, snowmobiles, plus parts and accessories. Huge selection means high volume. High volume means super low prices. 5-Star's got the best buying and ownership experience you'll ever have.
5-Star Power Sports. You were born ready for this.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
Enjoy one of our new bakery sweets like a cinnamon roll, blueberry muffin, or apple fritter paired with an any size premium roast coffee. Each bundle just $3. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome back to the show. Well, I think I can say this confidently. Penn State and James Franklin are probably happy they don't have to talk about a quote-unquote quarterback controversy this week as Sean Clifford looked really good. Will Levis kind of coming into his own, kind of around the goal line, short yardage situation. Is that what you guys were expecting to see this year between the two quarterbacks in terms of, all right, we're not going to be switching each week, this is what we want, and they finally executed it?
Well, hey, somebody on the panel thought they should start Levis, so we're researching the tape. Hey, you know, they used the quarterbacks well. I give them credit there. They wanted to send a message to Clifford that you can't turn the ball over. They did that. They started, Levis came back. They brought Clifford in. They went back to him. They obviously believe in Clifford, particularly as a leader. Levis is good in the running situations. I still would like to see a little bit more what he could do throwing the ball. Maybe there's a reason we don't, but they handled that well yesterday. I can't.
I really think you have to give Clifford a lot of credit too, because that could not have been easy, being benched in the previous game, even though he came back in. And you know what? He was the consummate team player. I mean, you could see him during the Iowa game being a team guy on the sideline. And then when he gets his chance again, he came in. You know what I liked? It didn't look like he was trying to force anything. It didn't look like he was trying to win the game himself, even though you're down yet another guy. Freiermuth's not out there now. You've lost all these players. He allowed his offensive line to do what it did, which was impressive, and for some other players to make plays. And that is the key to success. And when he had to step up and make a running play like that touchdown, he did it. So nice work by Sean Clifford.
Well, I think they're smart in playing both of them. I mean, up to this point, I think Franklin has been hesitant to put Levis in there. But now we know Levis can run the ball. He did that last year at Ohio State, if you remember. He led the team at the end of the game last year and did a good job. So I don't know. I think to be fair to him, let him play some and get him in there.
His spots.
Play them both. I mean, I don't think either one are going to be a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think they're both adequate. As Neil would say, they're serviceable.
There you go, Mike.
Use another
Me
term.
and your brother-in-law, you're quoting.
That's right. My wife, I have a quote from her later on.
I bet you do. But they tailored the game plan a little bit more to get the ball out of Clifford's hands. The longest pass completion was 22 yards, which was really a Washington catch and run. And they had 4 plays of longer than 20-yard runs. So I think they were trying to maybe not have him sit back in the pocket too long.
Well, they also committed to the run early,
Right.
and I think that we know that if you can run the ball, that makes life easier for your quarterback. And then what I really liked, guys, is the fact that even when they struggled a little bit running the ball, they didn't go away from it completely. And then you get to the fourth quarter, and how do they put the game away? You go back and you start running the ball. The offensive line gained confidence. You saw them going with a 6-man line. You saw Juice Scruggs coming in. You saw C.J. Thorpe throwing key blocks off the bench. That was a really good game for the offensive line. And again, after a tough year for the O-line, something that maybe you could build on moving forward.
Yeah, and I also liked, I think in the Indiana game when Levis would come in, they tried like a, kind of a read option and whatnot. Just get him going downhill and going forward, because it's not fun tackling Will Levis. I mean, he's not, as big as well, actually, you could argue he's as big as a tight end, but you get him downhill and you don't get his feet stopped. I think that's what leads to a lot of success. I'm watching Taysom Hill before we come on and whatnot, and yeah, I would agree Taysom Hill's a little bit better, but kind of the same running styles where you get him downhill, you don't want to tackle him. I mean, no offense to Clifford, he's a good runner with his legs, but I think you get Will Levis going downhill. Name me a person who wants to tackle him, going full speed.
Yeah, the Broncos could have used Levis today.
Broncos could have used Jack.
Hey, I did offer my services, but they sadly didn't take them and whatnot. But what I also thought was very good was the defense. I thought the defense, they gave up that one long run, but outside of that, I mean, I'm not saying Michigan's quarterbacks are all of that, but I really thought, a lot of this year was, the defense would take about a half to get going. And like I said, outside of that one run, I thought they played a pretty good game.
Well, they missed a couple of tackles on the long run that Haskins had, that 59-yard run, and I know last week Matt Millen came on the air and said it was the worst tackling Penn State team he's ever seen. But I thought they did a much better job yesterday. They seemed like they adjusted well. It could be a little bit Michigan's offense isn't that good. I mean, maybe we're playing against a different team.
Well, I agree with that, but I think that's a good point, Jack. And their defense does deserve credit, because there have been times when they haven't played complementary football. The offense has gone down, scored, and the defense has let something up right away. Mustafa, Brooks, and Smith is improving. They're using a lot of different guys in the secondary. I thought the defense stopped them on 4th and 1 twice, including early and late. So they played a lot better.
Yeah, and don't forget, one of the narratives of this game going in was that Michigan was coming off a game where they thought they found their quarterback. They scored, what, 40-some points in a win, albeit triple overtime at Rutgers. But this was a team that was playing relatively well offensively, and for Penn State to come out and do that. And I will go back to the one thing I mentioned earlier. For them to suffer that batting penalty, and whether you agree with that penalty or not, that seemed a little wacky to me, but I guess people say it was the right call. And then come back and have the third and fourth down stops on the next couple of plays. That's what you're talking about with a football team playing complementary football. Offense scoring, defense getting it done, and then the offense putting the game away. First time we've seen it this year.
Gotta love it. All right, coming up next. It wouldn't be a Nit Wits show if we weren't a little critical, so we'll do that next.
Do you have any idea how your mattress affects your body and how well you sleep? Is it too hard or too soft, causing you to wake up with sore shoulders, back, or hips? Are you uncomfortable because you're too hot or too cold? Now you can get the total body support you need and the better sleep you want with the new MyPillow mattress topper.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell. When I invented my new MyPillow mattress topper, I made it to have everything you'd ever want in a topper. My mattress topper helps give you the support you need, helps relieve your pressure points, and regulates your body temperature for you as an individual. It comes with a 10-year warranty. You can wash and dry the cover. It's made in the USA, and I back it with my 60-day money-back guarantee.
Call or go online now to take advantage of Mike's Christmas special. Use the promo code and Mike will give you 30% off and 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free. And he'll extend his 60-day money-back guarantee through March 1st, 2021.
MyPillow topper delivers on its promise to give me a better night's sleep.
I can sleep all night through, and it's a miracle for me.
Mike's exclusive 3-layer design starts with a layer of MyPillow foam, providing you superior support and comfort. The second layer of transitional foam evenly distributes body weight and helps relieve uncomfortable pressure points for optimal comfort. Mike's ultra-soft outer layer is a patented temperature-regulating cover that helps keep you at your ideal sleeping temperature all night long. Unlike other sleep systems costing thousands, the MyPillow mattress topper takes comfort to a whole new level without wires, remotes, or moving parts. Call or go online now to take advantage of Mike's Christmas special. Use the promo code and Mike will give you 30% off and 2 standard MyPillows absolutely free. And he'll extend his 60-day money-back guarantee through March 1st, 2021. And don't forget to get your MyPillow gift card for the best Christmas gift ever.
I personally guarantee it's going to change your bed into the most comfortable bed you'll ever own.
Order now.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
And welcome back to the show. Now, Penn State did win 27-17, first win of the season, but they are a 1-5 team. So, guys, I got to ask, there are still some, elements of being a 1-5 team that we saw yesterday. What really kind of stood out to you and what you hope they can fix going into Rutgers, Michigan State, and hopefully, like Neil said, potentially 2 more games after that?
Well, I would start with their red zone offense. I mean, I think they would move the ball down. They get down close to the goal line, and I hate that fade pattern that they keep throwing every game.
Join the club.
I mean, it's a lot easier to hit somebody coming across the middle than it is to throw it into the corner. You have to really be accurate, and you have to have a 6'5" receiver in there, and they don't have 6'5" receivers. So I mean, I think that's been the issue with them, and and then not having somebody under center for some of those short yardage situations.
Well, they did move in with Levis, and they had 2 tight ends, so we're going to have to accept that. But I agree with you on the fade. It's such a low percentage. They tried it a couple times. I didn't like when they spiked the ball and gave up a play. They didn't have to do that. Just general management of those situations. They let like 17 seconds roll off the clock and then called a timeout when maybe they could have used that time. It ended up being, got a field goal out of it. But what bothers me a little bit is I don't think they're taking enough chances on special teams. I mean, this is a year where you need an injection to help your offense and your defense, and they're fair catching all these kickoffs, including the ones where there's 15 yards in front of it. They haven't really gone after the punter at all. I'm just saying they kind of need some special teams plays that we haven't seen.
Well, we just saw a clip there of Jason Owe jumping offside. He did that twice in the second half, and one gave Michigan a first down, the other made a third down much shorter, and Michigan scored on both of those. And the other two, Michigan on two other Michigan scoring drives, Jordan Stout, I'm not sure what was going on there. I mean, he was kicking the ball out of bounds. This guy could put it out of the end zone every single time. I don't know if that was strategy. We didn't have a chance to, sometimes they try to get it down in that little corner. But to me, I think if you have Jordan Stout, you take the touchback every single time. That gave Michigan a shorter field twice, and they took advantage with the field goal and touchdown.
I saw one play. I think it was like 3rd and 3, and Clifford ran right into the line. And all I thought about was Neil Rudell was screaming from wherever he was, like, "Why are you doing that? Just put Levis in and whatnot." He
wanted to give it to the fullback.
So Neil, was my prediction correct?
Well, I do still think they run too many quarterback draws, but they got close to 100 yards of rushing out of their quarterback. So you can't really have it both ways. But I think those were scrambles. They weren't necessarily the designed runs. I think it takes away other opportunities from your running backs. Lee looks really good. You got home some carries. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with too many quarterback draws, but the quarterbacks ran the ball well, if that can be.
Lee had almost a perfect game, but then the one drawback, they were ready to kick a field goal, and he moved in the backfield.
4th and 1.
And made it 5 yards deeper.
Yeah, but that was after Michigan had a guy running off the field that Penn State could have snapped it and got a first down. So I give the freshman, I give him a pass.
Yeah.
And I think that the quarterback, even though it was Levis, has to recognize that and say snap the ball.
Yeah.
So sorry, Jack.
No worries. All right, coming up next, Rutgers is on the horizon for the Nittany Lions, but it won't be like years past playing the boys from Piscataway. We got our predictions. That's next.
Tis the season to be cheersin'. Get cheersin' with all with new holiday drinks at Dunkin'. Send a virtual cheersin' with the Dunkin' app.
Hey all, it's Corey and Gene Stocker from Stocker Subaru. Other than safely taking you places, your Subaru helps Meals on Wheels, Make-A-Wish, the National Parks Foundation, and the ASPCA. And this year, you can help keep animals safe from harm through our local charity, Pets Come First. Over the last 12 years, over $176 million has been donated to charity. Giving back feels good. During the Subaru Share the Love event, you can get the best deal of the year, and $250 will be donated to your choice of one of 4 national or 1 local charity. Get down to Stocker Subaru today, or start your deal at StockerSubaru.com.
Have those renovations that weren't a priority before moved to the do now list? That's okay, because Sisney & O'Donnell is here to help you bring those ideas to life. An office may be needed for working at home, or a facelift to your kitchen and entertainment area. We make the process simple and easy. The 50-plus years of experience has helped us expand into more remote options to get the project going. Visit us at SisneyRemodeling.com to schedule a consultation today.
We're cheersin' the merrymakers, the givers and not takers, and the home decorators. To those that got us through spring, summer, and fall, we're cheersin' for all at Dunkin'. Share some cheersin' with friends via the Dunkin' app. America runs on Dunkin'.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at our updated Nitwit of the Year standings and the guests with number 2, as Joe Nastasi was the only member of the panel to pick Penn State last week. So
what's holding you back, Jack?
I don't know.
We're just happy to deflate a ball.
I'm slow playing, I guess. I don't know what to tell you.
You're putting a lot of pressure on me. Here, the guests have 2 balls. I don't think I'm responsible for either one of them.
Well, how you got tonight, Mike?
I'll have a good shot tonight.
So Penn State plays Rutgers. They open up as about a 10-point favorite, but like years past, this would be an automatic check. In the win column, but Rutgers coming off a win against Purdue, took Michigan the triple overtime, beat Michigan State, who just beat Northwestern. So this isn't your same old Rutgers, and you got to give a lot of credit to Greg Schiano for somewhat reviving that program.
Hey, they've scored 79 points in 2 weeks, and they've really shown a passion and a resiliency to come back. This game's always meant more to Rutgers than it has to Penn State. I see it as a danger spot. Fortunately for Penn State, they should be desperate also to keep whatever momentum they built last week. You want picks or what?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not going to do picks this week.
But I'll email the pick after you guys make yours. I think Penn State's kind of have to outscore them, and that hasn't been a forte. I'll say Penn State 32, Rutgers 26.
Well, I'll go next. You know, Greg Schiano, this is a big game for him, too. Obviously a former Penn State assistant coach, and to be able to win on the recruiting wars would be big. But I like the job that Penn State's offensive line did this past week. I think they can really build on that. I'm going to pick Penn State 34, Rutgers 24.
Mike?
Thanks for staying away from me anyway.
Yeah, I know our record against Rutgers is like 27-2. I hope another Maryland doesn't show up here.
That's good.
But I'm predicting 31, Penn State 31, Rutgers 17. I think they'll beat them by about 14 points.
Yeah, and I'm going to go Penn State 40, Rutgers 23. I think Rutgers is kind of now like a plucky, everyone's kind of falling in love with them right now. They had that great win against Purdue. But I think Penn State finally found its formula. Don't turn the ball over. And, if Sean Clifford has finally figured that part out and whatnot, I think, I think Penn State with the defense finally, realizing that, hey, we can play well in the first half too. Like there's nothing against the rules with doing that. And I think, Rutgers, they've had their pluck, they're not sneaking up on anyone. So I guarantee you James Franklin's, and not that Franklin ever does this, but I think the preparation for Rutgers is a lot different than it has been in years past. And, there's no fans, so it's not like the people in Piscataway can get all up in arms and get all riled up and whatnot. So I think, like I said, Penn State 40, Rutgers 23. So for Mark, Neil, Mike, I'm Jack. That's our show for this week. We'll see you here next week. Hopefully, maybe we're talking about 2 in a row, maybe.